We have these wonderful medications, but they also cause some pretty uncomfortable side effects, and there can be some dangerous interactions. The very common side effects are caused by the serotonin at those receptors. The 5-HT1 receptors give us most of the good effects that we want. The increased serotonin at 5-H2 receptors can cause some of the insomnia, the initial anxiety, the initial agitation, and because of the descending track of serotonin into the spinal column, it can cause sexual dysfunction. Now, this can be quite a problem with any of these medications that involve serotonin. The most notorious in my experience is paroxetine. It causes anorgasmia, inability to ejaculate. So you have somebody who comes in with depression and part of their symptom of depression is decreased libido, and then you're giving them a medication to help them feel better, and now they can't enjoy their sex life, and they become more depressed. So we have to watch out for these things. And then increased serotonin at 5-HT3 receptors causes the nausea, because amazingly, we have more serotonin receptors in our gut than we do in our brain. That's why our gut is called the enteric brain. Then there is a thing called serotonin syndrome. When there is too much serotonin in the system, it can affect the thalamus, which then brings about dysregulation of temperature. So we can become very high temperature, and our muscles can become rigid, and we are very agitated. So one of the ways of talking about serotonin syndrome is hot, stiff, and in a tiff, and it can be lethal because of the hypothermia. It does usually resolve when the medication is stopped or decreased. Now, there is a difficulty today because there's a medication that was, I don't know if it still is, very popular, and that is tramadol. Tramadol is a weak agonist of the mu opioid receptors, but it also increases the presence of serotonin. And so if you have a client who is receiving from their medical provider or a pain management clinic tramadol, which is a non-addictive pain management medication that has serotonin increasing effects, you can have problems. And I have several times had very conscientious pharmacists call me and say, "Are you aware you have a patient who's on tramadol and you're prescribing serotonin, you're prescribing sertraline?" And then we have discontinuation syndrome. That is all of those common side effects that can happen when a person begins a medication. And it is for that reason when they begin a medication that we usually start low and go slow. Well, if a person stops some of these medications abruptly, they can, not necessarily will, but they can also experience a discontinuation syndrome, the same types of symptoms. And that is why it is generally wise, if at all possible, to gradually taper people off these medications over a period of 2 to 3 weeks as well. Let's go on to the next slide.